My name is Kinsley, 35 years old, a single mother, and someone my whole family once pushed out like a stain nobody wanted to mention. At my sister Harper's lavish wedding, under glittering crystal lights, her ivory gown hugging her figure, and the refined laughter of nearly 300 guests, I sat at a table near the emergency exit. A corner everyone knows is for the unimportant people. I said nothing, asked for nothing. I only wanted Oliver to witness a beautiful moment in a family he still tried to believe was whole. But then, while Harper raised her glass, she suddenly turned, pointed straight at me, and said in front of everyone, "This is the person who ruined our family. A failure, not worthy of sitting here." Laughter erupted. Some looked at me with pity, but most just joined in. I did not stand up. I did not cry. I did not retaliate. A few minutes later, as the music resumed, the large LED screen behind the bride unexpectedly lit up. A video played, the two of them in the familiar room. And the person who queued that video up was none other than my son Oliver, who is only 11 years old. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by your own family, right when you were trying to endure and keep the peace? If you have ever been belittled, pushed out of your own story, please leave a comment below. Hit like if you have ever been insulted and no one spoke up for you. Subscribe if you want to know what happened after that video. Because I will tell everything, from the beginning, with nothing hidden. I sat there, my hand tightening around a glass of water with the ice melting, my gaze fixed on the space ahead. Everything around me blurred as if someone had draped a thin veil. But the sounds were painfully clear, soft laughter mingling with the clink of glass, the rustle of dresses as people turned to look at me. Oliver sat beside me silent. He did not ask, did not speak. But I felt his stare like a rope pulling me out of the heavy mire pressing against my chest. I did not understand why Harper had to do that. Despite whatever disagreements between us, despite being the dim shadow beside her all through childhood, I would never have thought she would destroy her own sister's important day. I had come for only one reason, so Oliver could witness a beautiful moment in the family he still wanted to believe was intact. I turned to my son and forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart." Oliver didn't answer. He kept watching Harper, his face unnervingly calm for an 11-year-old. Just as I told myself to hold on a little longer, the speakers suddenly cut the music, throwing the hall into brief confusion. Whispers broke out. Before I could react, Oliver rose from his seat and crossed the dance floor, his shirt wrinkled at the back from sitting too long. I jumped to my feet. "Oliver." I called softly, but my voice cracked. He did not look back. I took a step toward him when the stage lights flashed, and immediately an image appeared on the big screen. It was my old bedroom. The room in the house I used to share with Ethan, the husband who left me after nearly 10 years together. A grainy video began to play, but what appeared could not be mistaken. Harper, wearing one of my familiar hoodies. Ethan, sitting on the edge of the bed, pulling her closer. I cannot remember how I breathed in that moment. Someone gasped. Someone's glass hit the floor. I just stood there, rooted to the spot. I looked at the DJ, the man beside the control table, still fumbling, looking around as if waiting for someone to stop him. Oliver stood next to him, serious, holding my phone tightly. I do not recall how long the clip ran. But when it ended, the entire reception sank into a terrible silence. Harper disappeared from the head table. Liam, the groom whom I had only seen in the wedding photos, stared at the screen as if someone had thrown freezing water on him. My mother, Linda, stood up from the table, her mouth opening then closing, unable to form a word. I did not need to look around to know what people were thinking. I moved toward my son. He looked at me, waiting as if afraid I would scold him. I crouched and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Why did you do that?" Oliver answered very softly, but I heard every word. "Because they don't get to call you someone who ruined anything." My chest tightened, not from the insult, but because my child had seen far more than a child should have to see. "When did you find that footage?" I asked. "On your old hard drive in the closet," he said. I wasn't going to watch, but I saw a folder with a strange name, and then I nodded, fighting back tears. I had forgotten that the security camera recordings had been synced to that old computer. Back then, when I suspected Ethan was hiding something, I had installed a camera as a last resort. But I never had the courage to watch the footage in full. When the divorce happened, I froze the data, stashed it away like a wound I refused to touch. I never imagined Oliver would be the one to open it. I hugged him. The embrace had no words, just the sound of our hearts hammering in our chests. Footsteps pounded from the right side of the stage. Harper returned, her face ashen, lipstick smeared, makeup streaked around her eyes. "Are you sick?" Harper shouted. She didn't look at me, she looked straight at Oliver. "What's wrong with this kid? Why would he expose private things in front of guests?" I stepped forward, putting myself between her and my son. "Private? Do you really think I was the one who put that video up?" Harper looked around the reception, bewildered, where people still sat in silence as if waiting for the next act of a tragic play. I didn't lower my voice. I had no intention of holding back any longer. "You stood in front of 300 people and called me the one who ruined the family. Did you think about the consequences? Or did you think, as always, that I would bow my head and smile it away?" Harper sneered, but the laugh had no weight. "I didn't ruin her life. She made her own bad choices. Who told her to take that low-paying job? Who told her to let her marriage go stale without trying to keep it?" Her words struck me like a lash. I looked up at Liam, the groom, a few steps away. He no longer looked composed. "What do you think?" I asked, voice steady. Liam glanced at Harper, then back to me. "I didn't know. I had no idea." "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," I replied. "But the truth doesn't need an invitation to show up." I heard Oliver whisper beside me, "Mom, you don't have to explain." I squeezed my son's hand. I had never taught Oliver to be that strong. Yet somehow my long silence over the years had taught him that sometimes you cannot remain quiet. Sometimes you have to speak up even if your voice trembles. Harper froze in the middle of the reception, her face twisted with anger and confusion. I had never seen her lose control before, not because she never had reason, but because there was always someone behind her sweeping away the traces. Since our childhood, Harper had been oddly favored. She was called the family's golden girl, while I was the eldest sister in name only, always expected to step aside for space, for words, and eventually, for trust. I remember clearly the day Ethan came to Harper's 27th birthday party. By then, Ethan and I had been married for 5 years. I brought him to my mother's house with cake and presents, hoping the occasion might warm the cooling relations between me and my family. I told myself not to notice the way Ethan's eyes lingered on Harper as she opened gifts. I chose to ignore Harper sitting close on the sofa while Ethan leaned in, whispering something that made them both laugh. Linda watched and smiled as if everything were perfectly normal. I mentioned it to my mother after the party in a rare moment of weakness. She folded her arms, tilted her head, and said, "Kinsley, maybe you're imagining things. Why would Ethan pay attention to Harper? She's your sister, not a rival." I nodded. Not because I believed her, but because I was tired. Soon after, Ethan began staying out late. He changed his phone password. When I asked, he snapped that I was controlling, that I made him feel suffocated. Harper still showed up on weekends, bringing pastries, wine, and that unfamiliar perfume I sometimes found on Ethan's collar. I chose not to confront. I believed silence was the last resort to keep a family from breaking. But I didn't realize that silence would make me the one blamed for everything. When Ethan left, no one in the family asked if I was okay. No one blamed him. Linda called calmly, "I told you marriage isn't just about feelings. You have to know how to keep a man." I didn't reply. I looked at Oliver, then Ape sitting on the floor with his blocks. I swore I wouldn't let him grow up in a house full of blame and deceit. After the divorce, Harper stopped visiting. But I heard from old neighbors that Ethan's car was often parked at my mother's late at night. Then a photo of the two of them, arms around each other, surfaced from a charity event. No one in the family confirmed or denied it. And I did not ask. I stayed silent as I always had. Until today. Harper approached, her high heels clicking across the floor as if she were stepping onto a stage, not into the wreckage she had helped create. "You're pathetic," she said, her gaze cold as it passed over me. "You think that video will make people pity you? What you need is therapy, not playing the victim at someone else's wedding." I didn't look around to see who was watching. The humiliation no longer swallowed me. Instead, a strange clarity settled over me. "I didn't bring that video," I said slowly. "And I don't want pity. I'm done being silent." Oliver still stood beside me, his eyes never leaving Harper. "You called my mother the person who ruined the family," he said, voice calm as still air. "But I live in that house. I saw who actually ruined it. Harper huffed. Kids don't understand anything. Oliver tilted his lip. I saw who hugged my father in my mother's bedroom while my mother had to work nights at the office. A few guests let out audible breaths. I saw Liam leave his seat and step outside where staff were clearing fallen glasses. He didn't follow. No one did. It was then Linda stood, her voice hard. Enough. Are you trying to turn this wedding into a courtroom? I turned to her. I just want to ask one thing. Do you know about what happened between Harper and Ethan? She adjusted her jacket, lips pressed tight. That's not my business, she replied. I laughed. Then why did you tell me that the marriage fell apart because I couldn't keep my husband? Linda did not answer. She turned to Harper. Bride's room. Don't stand here anymore. But Harper did not move. She must have realized that every escape route was blocked. You act so high and mighty, Harper challenged. You live in misery, so you want to drag everyone down into the mud? I replied, my voice not loud but clear. No one has to be in the mud just because they speak the truth. I turned to Oliver. Let's go home, sweetie. He took my hand. His palm was small, warm, and strangely firm. We left the reception hall in silence, passing rows of tables still lit by candles and faces that no longer judged, only stayed silent. I used to think silence was a safe cover. But standing in that wedding, among people who had once called me family, I understood that sometimes silence is the deepest cut we place in our own hearts. And there are cuts that must be spoken aloud so they are not passed down to the child holding our hand. I had never imagined a wedding ceremony could turn into a stage where someone took a microphone to insult their own blood as if reading from a rehearsed speech. Harper held a champagne flute, her crystal-embellished gown reflecting the ceiling lights like a star about to fall. She looked around, smiling graciously, trying to maintain the atmosphere she always dreamed of. Opulence, elegance, the admiring eyes of hundreds. But my gaze at that moment was fixed on only one person. My son. Oliver sat beside me, his white shirt wrinkled at the waist, his hair neatly combed yet slightly disheveled from repeatedly looking down and up with nervousness. Harper began her speech. Thank you everyone for coming to celebrate with us, she said, her eyes sweeping each table like a seasoned host. There are so many special people here, and a few who are quite familiar. The line was delivered with a mix of sarcasm and sweetness, prompting scattered laughter, as light as a mosquito's buzz but stabbing my ears like a pinprick. Harper lifted her glass, directing her gaze straight at our table. And I want to give a special thanks to my sister, the one who taught me everything not to do in life. This time the laughter was louder. Someone whistled. A man chuckled out loud, snorting as if trying not to spit. I tightened my hand over the hand resting on my lap. Harper continued, her voice still sweet as honey, but each word poured out like acid. She is living proof that wearing a wedding dress doesn't mean a marriage will last. And having children doesn't automatically make someone a good mother. In any case, your presence here today is quite a surprise to me. I heard a spoon clink lightly against a plate. The laughter was no longer hesitant. My mother, Linda, sat at the head table with relatives, smiling and nodding as if endorsing every word. She lifted her wine glass to her lips, glancing at me through the crystal rim. My throat went dry. Oliver squeezed my hand hard. I turned to look at him. The boy's eyes were wide and glossy, his face stunned, not understanding how grown-ups could say such things without anyone stopping them. I tried to smile. A twisted, lonely smile in a room where I was clearly not welcome. It's okay, sweetheart, I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. Oliver said nothing, but his small hand held mine as if afraid that if he let go, I would collapse right there. The music started again after the speech. People raised their glasses, tapped silver spoons on goblets like an applause. Harper left the stage with a satisfied look, returning to the head table with the groom and her entourage. No one stopped her. No one defended me. I caught a woman whispering to her friend, "Isn't that the sister who was left by her husband?" The other replied, "Yeah. I heard she went bankrupt, lost her house. Probably here to beg." My eyes stung. I looked down at my faded navy dress, the low-heeled shoes scuffed at the edges, and a wave of humiliation swept over me like a cold current. I thought I had steeled myself to come here, expecting to be treated like an extra. But I hadn't expected disdain to be legalized by a microphone. Oliver turned to me, his voice low, almost like an adult. Mom, why are they allowed to do that and no one says anything? I couldn't answer. I don't understand, he continued, looking straight at my mother. Grandma smiled when Harper spoke ill of you. Grandma knows you're a good person. So why didn't she say anything? I could only squeeze my son's shoulder gently. I didn't want him to carry his anger. But I couldn't teach him to swallow the hurt as I had learned to do. Someone shouted for everyone to get up and dance. Harper had changed into another pair of high heels, arm in arm with her new husband, gliding across the dance floor as if nothing had happened. I felt pushed away from what was called family, like an audience member forced to watch a show in which I was the mocked protagonist. Harper looked back, her eyes meeting mine. She tilted her head and raised her glass toward me with a smirk. I did not look back. Oliver tugged my hand. Mom, I want to go home. I nodded. Okay, sweetheart. We rose, quietly walked toward the door. No one stopped us. No one said goodbye. As my hand reached the doorknob, a voice spoke from behind. Leaving during a wedding is really impolite. I turned. Linda stood behind me, her expression stern. What is it about you that's so impolite? Letting my daughter humiliate you in front of 100 people? She crossed her arms and sighed like someone who had run out of patience. You always make a scene. Harper was only joking. Everyone is laughing. Who is taking it seriously? I looked straight into my mother's eyes. You think joking means dragging divorce, bankruptcy, and being a single mother out in front of hundreds? Is that what you taught Harper? Linda pursed her lips, eyes narrowing. She was about to say something when Oliver spoke up. I see that Mom can't even smile. I see her swallowing her tears inside. She looked at Oliver as if only now realizing he was no longer an innocent child. I said nothing more. I pushed the door open and left with my son. The music still echoed behind us, the smiles, the clinking glasses, and the looks that would never be for me. I no longer needed them. Oliver held my hand tight, said nothing, but his hand told me everything. And I knew, however harsh the world might be, at least I had not taught my child to live by silence. The car rolled out of the hotel parking lot, the yellow lights smearing across the windshield like a bad dream not yet dissolved. Oliver sat silently in the passenger seat, his hands tangled together on his lap, eyes fixed on the dark ahead. No one spoke. I turned the air conditioning down low. The breeze whispered, but my throat remained parched and tight. I wanted to say something to clear the heavy air, but my throat was tight as a knot. Finally, Oliver broke the silence. Are you going to be mad at me? I looked at him. His face was tilted toward the window, his voice hoarse from holding back. Because I kept that video, he continued. Because I watched it without asking. I pulled the car to the side, switched on the hazard lights, and turned fully toward him. Oliver, I'm not mad. I'm just surprised. He looked at me, his brown eyes shining under the streetlight, waiting for something. I breathed slowly, trying to sort my feelings. Where did you find it? In the hard drive you kept under the wardrobe. There was a folder named Old Financial Project, but when I opened it, it was full of footage from the cameras in the old house. I closed my eyes for a moment. I had labeled that folder to hide it, even forgotten it existed. It held recordings from the time everything began to fall apart. I installed that camera in the bedroom when I started suspecting my husband was turning away from our family. I had never planned to watch those clips again. Did you watch all of it? Oliver nodded very slightly. Not all, but enough to understand why you've been sad for so long. And why you never told anyone. The words stabbed my chest like someone had placed a cold stone on the deepest part of my ribcage. I put my hand on his. I was afraid you'd be hurt if you saw those things. Oliver did not pull his hand away, but he did not look at me. Because you were afraid you had to suffer alone for so long, didn't you? I did not answer. I did not need to confirm it. The car sat at the roadside. Occasional vehicles passed, their headlights punctuating the private conversation that was stripping us raw. How long have you had that video? Almost a year, he replied. I didn't know what to do. I thought you wouldn't want to talk about it, so I didn't ask. But when Harper said those things, and everyone laughed, I couldn't stand it. His voice faltered at the end. I saw you clench your hand, bite your lip, look at the floor like someone hit you and you weren't allowed to respond. I tilted my head and put my hand on his cheek. You shouldn't have had to see me like that. I saw it, Oliver whispered. And I can't forget. I looked at my son, my face and Ethan's eyes in one small body, and realized some wounds don't need blood to change a person forever. What were you planning to do with that video? Oliver looked at me for a long time. His face no longer had the softness of an elementary school child. It carried a resolve that surprised me. I was going to send it to you, he said. But then I was afraid you'd delete it. You never fight back. You just stay silent. I squeezed his shoulder gently. My silence doesn't mean I'm weak. I know, Oliver replied. But sometimes, I wish you wouldn't be so quiet. I turned back into the driver's seat, switched off the hazard lights and drove on. His words echoed in my head like a sad melody that wouldn't stop. I used to think I was protecting him by hiding the most painful parts. But perhaps in hiding those things, I left him alone to face questions no one taught him how to answer. Mom, Oliver called softly. If tomorrow I play that video, will you be mad? The question hit me. What did you say? You don't have to do anything, he said clearly. I can step forward. I'll speak. Because if they think you're the bad one, I'll show them who's really wrong. I turned onto the small road that led to our apartment, confused, my chest full of feelings I couldn't name. I never taught him about revenge. But I also never taught him to be silent in the face of injustice. Oliver, that's not as simple as you think, I said slowly. It will shock people. Harper's marriage, Grandma's family, everything will be affected. What about you? Oliver asked. Won't you be affected? I fell silent. You've lived like this for 3 years, he continued. They laugh at your pain. They tell old stories like wounds or jokes. You've let them do it for too long. I stopped the car at the apartment gate, turned off the engine and leaned my head against the seat. Outside, the night breeze rubbed the blades of grass at the curb. You don't have to do it for me, I said. If you do it, make sure it's because you believe it's right. Oliver turned to me, his eyes steady. I'm doing it for both of us. Because if I stay silent, I'll regret it. I wrapped my arms around him. I didn't stop him. Nor did I encourage him. I just held him tight so that whatever happened next, my child wouldn't have to fight alone like I had. I stood against the wall, hands still clutching my handbag strap as if it were the only thing keeping me from falling apart in that room of glittering lights and ritualized laughter. Everything moved too fast after Oliver's statement in the car, and I didn't know what he had decided to do until I saw his small figure slip away from me and cross the dance floor. Oliver walked slowly, unhurried, not looking around, not afraid. His suit was a bit large for his frame, the pant cuffs grazing his shoes, but his posture was firm and straight. I managed to open my mouth to call, Oliver, and then stopped when he looked back. His gaze was calm as a still lake, but there was a determination in it I had never seen in any adult in my family. No anger. No panic. Just clarity, as if he had thought this through and no longer wanted to wait another second to do what was right. I stopped in my tracks, my shoes feeling glued to the glossy tile floor. Part of me wanted to run after him and pull him back, but the deeper part of me knew that if I did, I would be teaching him again to stay silent. Harper was standing by the wedding cake table, smiling broadly, arm in arm with the groom Marcus as if they had stepped out of a magazine cover. Her wealthy friends clustered around, admiring the Vera Wang gown and the classical love song drifting through the room. No one saw the storm about to break. I watched Oliver approach the DJ booth, where a man was fussing with the sound levels. He tapped the man's shoulder. They exchanged something I couldn't hear. Oliver took my phone from his jacket pocket. I remembered I had given it to him earlier so I wouldn't be disturbed. Now it was in his hand, the screen bright as he opened the prepped video. I drew a deep breath, but it couldn't fill my lungs. I had never seen such courage in my son. No one had taught him how to face a crowd, and no one had shown him how to speak up when nearly everyone present had once turned their backs on us. The DJ glanced at the screen, frowned, then looked toward me standing in the distance. I nodded, not loudly, not clearly, but enough for him to understand this was not a prank. The music cut out suddenly. The crowded room went off balance as if someone had drained the air out of it. Heads lifted. Some assumed a technical glitch, others began to murmur. Oliver stepped onto the small riser where the band usually played. He took the microphone set there without fumbling, without hesitation. Hello everyone, his clear voice carried through the sound system. My name is Oliver. I'm Kinsley's son, the person sitting at the very back right table. All eyes swung to me. I straightened up. I did not retreat. Oliver did not wait for a reaction. He continued. A little while ago during her speech, Harper, the bride, called my mom a burden, said she ruined the family. She spoke as if my mom caused everything to fall apart. But if people are going to believe that, maybe they should hear the rest of the story. No one spoke. No one laughed. The room suddenly felt far too quiet compared to minutes before. I looked toward the head table. Harper stood frozen. Marcus stared at his wife, bewildered. Oliver turned to the DJ and handed him the phone. The man hesitated a beat, then hit play. The large LED screen behind the head table lit up. A video started to play. The scene was the familiar bedroom, dimly lit but clearly detailed. The room where I used to live. The room where Ethan and I shared those last days. Harper appeared, her hair tied up, wearing one of my hoodies. She laughed. A laugh that cut into memory like a wound. Ethan stood behind her, his hand on her waist, saying something that made her throw her head back and laugh loudly. A long breath escaped from the crowd. No one in the room moved. Harper panicked. She lunged toward the DJ, shouting, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" But it was too late. They had seen. I did not move. Oliver stood at the edge of the stage, eyes fixed on my mother, who had gone pale, lips pressed, blood drained from her face. Marcus turned to Harper, his expression blank. He said something I couldn't hear. Harper tore her hand free and ran out of the reception hall. I only heard the frantic clack of her heels before she disappeared through the big doors. Oliver came down, still holding the microphone. He walked straight to me, his eyes never leaving my face for a second. I opened my arms, pulled him into me. No one applauded. No one objected. All that remained was the truth, bare and undeniable. And my child, the only child in that room, was the first to choose not to look away. The sound in the hall shattered into hundreds of fragments. Murmurs mixed with shock, chairs scraped, glasses tumbled and clinked. I could hear the shallow breaths of guests at the nearest tables, as if they had just been forced to watch a drama not in their program. On the screen, Harper and Ethan were arm in arm, too intimate to be explained away. The clip was short, minutes, but enough to turn an elegant space into one where people couldn't meet each other's eyes. Oliver stood there, microphone gripped in both hands. He stared at Harper without blinking. She called my mom a burden, his voice rang through the room. But what you just saw is what really tore my family apart. Harper stayed rooted near the head table. Her face went from ashen to flushed, then pale again as if the mask had been stripped off in front of the crowd. Marcus, the groom, slowly rose from his chair. He looked at his wife, then at the screen, then at me, eyes a mix of anger and despair. "Harper," he managed, voice hoarse. "Is that true?" Harper stammered, her lips trembling. She tried to step toward him but tripped on her gown, staggering. The murmurs grew louder. Some guests turned away, others furtively lifted their phones to capture the image on the screen. Harper threw her bouquet to the floor, the flowers scattered in petals. She kicked off her shoes and ran for the door like someone fleeing a pursuer. I did not chase her. I did not need to. At that moment, Ethan appeared. He wore a dark suit and a neatly knotted tie, presenting the polished image of a successful businessman. Technically, he wasn't on the guest list, but Ethan always had a way of showing up where crowds gathered, pretending to be the devoted father. He paused near the doorway when he saw the screen still playing. His face tightened for a beat, then he composed himself and walked in as if nothing had happened. "Everyone, please calm down," Ethan said in a low voice, trying to sound steady. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. That video has been doctored." The room fell even quieter. Eyes swung to him, half believing, half skeptical. Oliver turned without hesitation. "It's not doctored. It's from the cameras in my mother's house from when Dad still lived with the family. He can deny it if he wants, but the truth doesn't change." Ethan went pale, anger flickered in his eyes. He looked straight at me as if seeking an ally. "Kinsley, you have to say something. You know it's not like that. You can't let our son talk nonsense like this." I stood up straight, oddly calm. "Ethan, I didn't install cameras to fabricate stories. You know that. The video is real. If you're ashamed, it's because you were the one who did it." A ripple of noise spread, this time not timid. A few guests shook their heads, others sighed. Marcus clenched his fists, veins standing out in his forearms. "You turned this wedding into a farce, Marcus said, voice thick. I trusted her, I trusted this family. And this is what I get. He stalked off toward the back, not looking at Harper as she fled. Linda, my mother, finally rose. She scanned the room, trying to reclaim her authority. That's enough, she shouted, her voice quavering. This is a wedding, not a place to smear people. None of this concerns anyone here. Please, everyone, continue with the meal. No one obeyed. The music did not come back on. No one raised a glass. No one laughed. I looked around. The faces that had been indifferent when I was humiliated were now bowed, avoiding eye contact. Oliver stepped down from the riser, the microphone still in his hand, but he did not need to say anything more. He walked straight to me, handed the microphone to a staff member, then looked up at me, calm. You did the right thing, he whispered. I held him, no words necessary. Ethan retreated toward the door, muttering doctored and staged, but no one paid attention anymore. Everyone's eyes had stopped on him and settled instead on the empty space where Harper had fled. No one could deny what they had seen. And in that chaos, I felt something clear. The microphone in Oliver's hand had not only broadcast the truth, it broke the chain of silence I had worn for so long. The sound in the reception fell so quiet that I could hear the ticking of a fork against someone's glass. Before the guests had recovered from the shock of the video, Oliver stepped forward again, the microphone still live in his hand. He stood small and straight under the bright lights, but his voice rang out, each word distinct. I haven't finished, he said. The whole hall turned its eyes at once. I took half a step forward, wanting to stop him, but his determined gaze held me still. Oliver took a deep breath. On my mother's old computer, besides the video, I found emails. Whispers burst like dry grass catching fire. Ethan froze, his face going from flushed to pale. Linda stepped back a pace, but her eyes remained hard as if to contain everything. Oliver opened the phone screen, his fingers scrolling through a few files. Then his voice rang out, steady and unshaken. Harper wrote to Ethan, if she loses custody of Oliver, we can control Dad's inheritance. The packed room felt suffocating. I heard sharp intakes of breath. A woman covered her mouth, a man blurted, "By God." Marcus turned back from the doorway, his face set hard. Did Harper really write that? He demanded. No one answered. Oliver continued, eyes glued to the screen. The email also said, the wedding is only the first step. Once he's legally tied to her, we can force Kinsley to hand everything over. Don't worry, Linda will support it. His words struck the room like a hammer on already cracked plaster. I saw Linda slump into a chair, her face gone stiff, and Ethan turn away, gripping a decorative pillar as if to brace against a collapse. Marcus strode forward, snatched the microphone from Oliver's hands. Is this true? He barked, eyes blazing at Ethan, then searching for Harper. Was this whole wedding just a staged play to take money? No one spoke. An older guest, who seemed to be a family business associate, rose, his face flushed. I invested in this company because I believed in it. And now, you exploited a marriage to cook up a scheme. His words unleashed a wave of outrage. People murmured, some rose and left, skirts rustling, chairs scraping. I stood still, my hand on Oliver's shoulder, keeping him close. My heart pounded, not from fear but from the shock of seeing every truth stripped bare so quickly, so nakedly. Marcus looked at me, his voice choking. Kinsley, did you know about any of this? I shook my head. I thought Harper married him for the glamour, but it goes deeper. I only heard this along with you. He tightened his grip on the microphone and threw it to the floor. It hit with a sharp clatter. I've been turned into their puppet. Ethan stepped forward, trying to stay composed. Marcus, let me explain. Marcus waved him off, furious. How do you explain planning to take custody of a child to seize assets? That's despicable. Linda suddenly rose, her voice thin with desperation. All of you shut up. This is not the place to air this. Everyone has the right to protect their future. Harper just wanted to be sure. I looked straight at my mother. Sure, by using my son as a pawn? By turning your grandson into a tool to grab money? She didn't answer, only turned away, her shoulders shaking. Ethan barked, Kinsley, don't act surprised. You're always weak, can't manage anything. If Oliver lived with me, he'd have a better life. Oliver could not take it anymore. He stepped forward, his small voice ringing through the hall. You're wrong, Dad. I need a mother who doesn't lie and doesn't trade me for money. I choose to stay with my mom." Oliver's voice landed like a period. The already chaotic room fell utterly silent, then erupted into outraged whispers aimed at Ethan and Harper. Marcus drew a deep breath, pulled off his wedding band and slammed it down on the table. He turned and strode out, not looking back. Harper stumbled back from the corridor, mascara streaked, and saw the scene. She screamed Marcus's name, but it was useless. He had vanished through the big doors, leaving her kneeling on the floor, her white gown soiled, petals scattered at her feet. I wrapped my arms around Oliver. The room swayed, but inside me there was clarity. The truth had surfaced. Nothing left to conceal, no reason to be silent. I helped Oliver out of the hall, leaving the buzzing chaos behind. The hotel's long carpeted corridor glowed under warm lights as my son paced, tense and breathing hard. Harper ran ahead, her heavy gown sweeping the floor, bouquet ruined and tossed aside. When she spotted me and Oliver, she halted, cornered. "Get out of the way!" Harper screamed, her voice raw, eyes red. "You ruined my life." I walked toward my sister slowly, keeping Oliver beside me. The fear that had lived in me disappeared, replaced by the calm of someone who had been waiting for this moment too long. "No, Harper," I said, each word clear. "You ruined your own life. You stole my husband and you planned to take my son. You thought I'd sit quiet forever? You were wrong." Harper trembled, hands up as if to hide her face. "You don't understand. You never understand. I had no other choice." Oliver clenched his teeth, his voice unusually firm. "You had a choice. You could have not betrayed. You could have not made my mother a joke. You chose wrong." Harper spun toward him, eyes furious, then broke into inconsolable sobs. "Mom made me do it." Her cries echoed down the corridor. A few distant staffers turned. The feast hall doors burst open and Linda stepped out. She no longer had her usual regal bearing. Her hair hung, makeup smudged. Yet her eyes remained cold, controlling. "Quiet, Harper," Linda snapped. "Are you trying to shame your mother in front of the hotel?" Harper fell to her knees, clutching her gown. "It was you. You told me to marry Ethan. You said it was the only way to save the reputation, to keep the company from outsiders. You made me a puppet." The corridor constricted. Every word felt like a prick of metal on skin. I looked at Linda, waiting for denial. She stood silent, no excuse, no remorse. "Yes," Linda admitted coolly. "I did whatever it took to protect this family. Did you think I wanted Harper to marry Ethan out of love? It was a deal. Ethan has money, connections. Harper has looks. Together they would keep the Voss name clean. And you, Kinsley, you are a failure. You never knew how to use what you had." Oliver squeezed my hand, his eyes burning with anger. "Grandma says that to my face and isn't ashamed? She sees me as a tool." Linda hesitated for half a second, then snapped back with a brittle tone. "He's Ethan's son. Blood is an asset. Of course you plan to keep it." I stepped forward and stood between Oliver and Linda. "You've forgotten that honor can't be bought with deceit. You used my sister, used my husband, and wanted to take my son. All to patch your fake honor. You've long since lost a real family." Harper wailed, mascara streaming. "I didn't want to. But Mom threatened me, said she'd cut me out of the will, leave me penniless. I was scared. I was too weak to refuse." I looked at my sister with a bitter, pitying heart. "Weak enough to betray your own sister, steal a man, scheme over a child? Harper, you chose this path." Harper shook her head, babbling, but offered no defense. Linda crossed her arms, her voice full of contempt. "You think you're nobler? You stayed silent when your husband cheated and did nothing. You're no different than Harper. Only weaker, which is why you lost everything." I stared at my mother for a long time. The heaviness in my chest turned into a hard clarity. "No, you're wrong. My silence was to protect Oliver, not out of fear of losing status. Today my son showed me that the truth doesn't need backing. It can topple schemers on its own." Linda flinched, her gaze flicking to Oliver. Then she turned away, her voice thick. "You will regret this." Oliver looked up calmly. "The ones who will regret it are not us." Harper collapsed on the red carpet, sobbing. Linda clutched her purse and hurried to the elevator, leaving behind a corridor heavy with exposed truths. I tightened my grip on my son's hand. The warmth of his small palm told me I had made the right choice. No more silence, no more hiding. Words unspoken were now spoken, loud and clear. From now on, no one could make Oliver or me into pawns in their cold games. The hall seemed to echo back when Marcus pushed through the doors, his face marked by fury. The impression of the ring he had just removed remained on his finger. His eyes scanned Harper kneeling in the corridor like steel. "This marriage is over right now," he declared, voice booming without hesitation. The words landed like a hammer, throwing the banquet into turmoil. The formal atmosphere collapsed into chaos. I watched a few wealthy guests, those who had come for business ties, stand and hurriedly gather coats and bags, afraid to linger and be caught up in a scandal the press would chew up. An older man with silver hair, familiar in real estate circles, leaned to his companion. "We can't be tied to this. Let's go." Within minutes, rows of seats stood empty, chairs toppled, untouched glasses left on tables. The groom's family grew furious. A middle-aged woman, likely Marcus's aunt, stepped forward and pointed at Linda. "You let your family turn this wedding into a circus. Do you know how much money and effort my family put into this?" Linda struggled to regain her composed posture. Her lips trembled, but she tried to assert authority. "Everyone calm down. This is a misunderstanding. Harper and Ethan, it's old news people are digging up." "A misunderstanding?" Marcus roared, pivoting on her. "Those emails are a misunderstanding? You and your daughter schemed to steal custody of a child to siphon funds from another family, and you call it a misunderstanding." No one spoke. Phones lifted across the room. I caught a flash of a screen. Harper's image from the video, Ethan bending to hold her waist, being shared on social media at that very moment. A young man in a sharp suit, possibly one of Marcus's friends, scoffed, "Give it 5 minutes and all of Austin will see this clip. The Voss family is finished." Linda went pale but tried to keep standing, as if refusing to fall would save some semblance of dignity. "No one outside this family has the right to judge. We'll handle it internally." "Handle it internally?" cut in a voice. It was Robert, my father's longtime partner. He had kept ties with Linda for business, but now his gaze was icy. "Your reputation is already buried online. Who would want to be associated with you?" Those words pierced Linda like a knife. I saw her stagger, clutching at the back of a chair. By then Harper had dragged herself up, sobbing. "Marcus, please. Let me explain," she cried. But Marcus had already turned his back and walked straight out the door. The groom's party followed, faces furious and disappointed. A few even hurled curses as they left. The click of high heels, the thud of men's footsteps, the slam of the door echoed, leaving a vast emptiness in an otherwise splendid reception hall. On the LED screen, the video remained frozen on Harper laughing in Ethan's arms. No one turned it off. Perhaps everyone wanted to see their guilt confirmed to the very last second. A young guest lifted his phone, tapped send, and whispered to his friend, "It's on Twitter. It's spreading like crazy." I looked around. The faces that had laughed when I was humiliated now hung low, avoiding eye contact. They were afraid of being implicated. They were afraid someone would notice they'd been present at this scandalous event. Linda finally gave up. She blurted, "It's just a video. We can hire lawyers, we can." I cut her off, my voice low but firm. "No lawyer can erase the truth on the internet. The reputation you treasure fell apart tonight." Oliver stood beside me, his small hand clenched in mine. He didn't say anything more, but his eyes shone with the certainty that what we had just endured marked the end of a dark era. Meanwhile, Harper sat slumped on the carpet, her wedding dress stained with dust and tears, whispering, I didn't mean to," but there was no one left to listen. The once glittering reception now held only a few flickering candles, some overturned tables and scattered murmurs. The dance music was gone, replaced by the heavy sounds of a family losing everything in a single night. I walked slowly down the red carpet, not looking back at my mother or my sister. In that moment I understood that those who had once considered themselves keepers of honor and power had torn everything apart themselves, and that collapse could not be stopped. After that chaotic night at the hotel, all of Austin buzzed. Headlines screamed online. Images of Harper fleeing with smeared mascara spread everywhere. The video Oliver revealed became living proof. No one could deny it. Harper vanished almost immediately. She didn't return to our mother's house, nor to the luxury apartment Marcus had arranged. Rumor had it she left the state. Some people claimed to have spotted her in a small Colorado town traveling alone, no longer wearing the sheen of Miss Voss. Wherever she went, my sister had fallen out of the spotlight my mother had wrapped around her. Ethan was different. He kept a calm demeanor for a few days, but when the court agreed to reopen the custody case, he began to lose control. The email Oliver read aloud and the camera footage became heavy evidence. My lawyer only needed to file them. In the end, the court revoked his visitation rights. When the judgment was read, I saw my son's shoulders relax as if a weight had been lifted. Ethan left the courtroom with his head down, no longer the confident man who thought he could control everything. Linda didn't give up. She called repeatedly and left a string of messages. "Kinsley, don't block me. I just want to talk. After all, we're family." I read them but didn't answer. The more I heard her voice, the more I realized that to my mother, family was a cloak of prestige. I was too tired to keep wearing that cloak for her. Oliver adapted faster than I expected. He never boasted about what he did at the wedding, but I noticed him walking taller with a steadier gaze. One night while I was preparing dinner, he came over and whispered, "I don't regret it. I protected you." I held him without saying more. Those words were enough to make the years I'd spent silently enduring feel meaningful. They had shaped a child who would stand up when needed. As for me, I had to learn to move forward. I enrolled in an evening MBA program. The classes are long, but I feel a new drive. I want to prove I'm not just the shadow my family ridiculed. I can rebuild a career and provide for Oliver on my own terms. What surprised me was an unexpected call from a large company in Dallas. The HR manager said, "We heard about your courage at that wedding. Someone who can face her whole family is surely strong enough to lead a team through hard times. Would you be interested in interviewing?" I sat at my computer, tears falling, but relief-filled tears. On the day I went to their headquarters, Oliver held my hand. He whispered, "Just tell the truth, Mom. You already did the hardest part." I smiled, realizing my 11-year-old son had grown beyond his years. Every night before bed I study MBA books while Oliver lies beside me reading children's stories. Sometimes he stops and looks up to ask, "Mom, if someone treats me unfairly in the future, should I speak up?" I look at him and answer with conviction, "You should speak. Silence only makes wrongdoers stronger. The truth, even if shaky, must be spoken." I think about the past years and the cost of silence. A marriage torn apart, a family divided, honor trampled. But I also think of the moment Oliver held the microphone in that hall, his voice bell clear, and realize it was then we broke free. Harper lost everything. Ethan lost custodial rights. Linda faces public scorn. Oliver and I don't have abundant money or glittering fame, but we have the truth and peace. The message I kept for myself and shared with my son: silence is not peace, it nurtures the cruel. Sometimes, to free ourselves and the next generation, the truth must be spoken even if the voice trembles. Oliver did that for me, and I will continue to do it for both of us. Looking back, I see that the truth liberated not only me but my son as well. Oliver learned that no one can force us to be silent when we are hurt. And I, after years of bowed head, finally lifted myself and walked forward with my dignity intact. What would you do in my place? Would you have the courage to speak the truth even knowing it would bring everything crashing down around you? I want to hear your thoughts, because sometimes sharing is how we help each other become stronger. If this story touched you, leave a comment below. Hit follow to walk with me through more family stories, full of tears, betrayal, but also hope and the strength to rise. I promise there are many more things I want to share, and maybe in them you'll see yourself.